back again, this time to talk about my BookTrek 2024 TBR, or to be read list of books. So something I'm really excited about this year is I picked up this book called Celebrating 40 Years of Star Trek, Voyages of Imagination, the Star Trek Fiction Companion by Jeff Ayres, with comments from a bunch of other authors who have written in the Star Trek world. So what this is essentially is it's a guidebook and a timeline to Star Trek fiction that was published in 2006. So obviously anything that was published after 2006 is not going to be included in here, but it's really nice and thick. It has lots of books listed in it. I'm actually really excited to dig into this. I haven't had a chance to do so yet, but I will be using this as a guide for my Star Trek fiction from now on. So super excited about this. So I'll start off with books that I've already read because today is the 8th of June and I have already read a few Star Trek books. So the first one that I have read is called Face of the Unknown by Christopher L. Bennett. This is actually an extension kind of the episode The Corbomite Maneuver. And I liked the story of this. I liked the way that Balak was portrayed in it, and I liked the way the world he comes from was portrayed. So I liked all those things about it, but I'm thinking that I'm not going to like this Star Trek author very much, but I won't talk too much about this book because I plan on doing an individual video where I go over all the thoughts I was having while I was reading this book. The next book that I read was The Captain's Oath, also by Christopher L. Bennett, and again, I won't talk about it too much since I do plan to do a video revolving only around this book. And then what I'm currently reading is Making It So by Patrick Stewart, which is a memoir, and I'm about halfway through it, and I'm really enjoying this. It is fantastic, and you don't even need to be a Star Trek fan to enjoy this book because he really doesn't mention Star Trek except for once or twice in it. It's fantastic. Oh, also I'm doing the audiobook, and he's narrating it himself, so that makes it extra excellent. Then I do have a couple of buddy reads planned. One of them is to read all the Shatnerverse novels with Randy over at the Literate Texan. I'll have Randy's channel linked in my description. We're going to read the Shatnerverse novels together. So the first one is Ashes of Eden. The next one is The Return, then Avenger, then Spectre, Dark Victory, Preserver. It's Preserver. Captain's Peril, Captain's Blood, and Captain's Glory. Hopefully I didn't miss any in there. If I did, I'll just insert them here. So last year, Gareth and I over at Book Songs and Other Magic, and I'll link his channel below, we were supposed to read How Much for the Planet by John M. Ford. We didn't get to that book. We may read it this year, I don't know. We'll see how everything works out. The next Star Trek books that I really want to read are the Genesis Wave books. Book 1, Book 2, Book 3, and then also Genesis Force, all written by John Vornholt. So the reason that I added these to my TBR was because Fred over at Read by Fred, whose channel I will also link in my description, he is reading those books right now, as a matter of fact. So I thought, well, while there was somebody to talk about those books with, that I should read those this year. The next thing that I want to do is, or that I want to read rather, is Demons by J.M. Dillard. Now I did start this at the very end of BookTrek last year, but I kind of ran out of Star Trek steam, so I got that far in. So I figure I will finish reading this book because what I really want to read is the Invasion series. It's 4 Star Trek novels, but I have found them all in a little bind up here. Well, a big bind up, really. And so I'm really excited to read this. And even though these books I don't believe are actually related, my understanding is the aliens in this one are very similar to the aliens in the Invasion series. So I really like to read Demons before I get into the Invasion books. And then last year I read the Prey trilogy by John Jackson Miller. I would have to say that I think John Jackson Miller is going to end up being my favorite Star Trek author. He is an amazing Star Trek writer. I absolutely love his books, and the Prey trilogy is easily the best Star Trek story I've ever read. However, I probably should have read Kahless before I read the Prey trilogy. You don't have to read Kahless first. I had no problem following along with the story of the Prey trilogy, but they did refer to what happened in Kahless, and I was finding myself wishing that I had read this first so that I would know exactly what happened to Kahless in this book. So this year I'm going to remedy that, and I'm going to read Kahless. The next Star Trek books that I would like to read are the Destiny trilogy. And again, I found a bind-up with all 3 books inside, and so I was very excited to find that, and so I'm looking forward to reading that. Okay, and the next book that I'm going to read, I'll be reading kind of slowly over the course of Book Trek. It's called Star Trek Genesis, the Star Trek universe at the very beginning by Jack Lawson. And what this does is it takes a number of Star Trek episodes from the original series, describes them, and sort of breaks them down to talk about why they were important episodes or why they were influential. So I thought this would be a really fun book to go through each episode one by one, watch the episode, and then read what he has to say about it. And then I even thought that I might do like a vlog style video on this, and just like every time I do one of the episodes, then I do a little short clip about it and then piece them all together at the end. But we'll see if I get ambitious enough to actually do that. But either way, I'll definitely be reading this because I think this sounds like fun. And then I came across this book, Do Comets Dream, which is a Next Generation novel by S.P. Somtow. And as far as I could tell, this is the only one that this author has written. And I'd never heard of it. Even the cover looks much different from all the other Star Trek novels that I've seen. So I had to look up some information about where this book falls in the Star Trek fiction universe. And apparently when that initial round of TNG novels where they were doing all those numbered books and everything, when that ended, there was like a brief period in there where they weren't really doing Star Trek books. And this guy had a Star Trek story that he apparently pitched originally as to previous publishers. I'm not exactly sure. I've kind of forgotten the details now, so I'm sorry. But he had pitched it before and had been refused. And he pitched it again during this in-between time, and they decided to publish it. So I'm really, really interested in this one. It seems like it's going to be kind of unusual. I did read the first few pages just to get a feel for what it's like. And in what little bit I read, I did enjoy. So I'm looking forward to giving this one a try. And then I'd like to read a Star Trek Next Generation novel called Takedown by John Jackson Miller. Again, I think that this author is going to be a favorite. And the only reason really that I want to read that this year is because it's John Jackson Miller. And then I would like to read a Star Trek TOS novel, Savage Trade. I can't remember what this is about. It really isn't that important. I just really liked the cover. This was pretty much a cover buy. I think the cover is really cool. Okay, and then I'd like to read a Star Trek Next Generation novel called Shadows Have Offended by Cassandra Rose Clark. So while Star Trek TNG was going, and for a long time after, I really wasn't super into all of the Klingon stuff. I mean, it was fine, I liked it, but I just felt there was way too much Klingon stuff happening, and I just kind of felt like I was being overwhelmed by it, which made me kind of eye roll anytime Klingon stuff came up. But then after I read the Prey trilogy last year and I saw what John Jackson Miller did with the Klingons, I was absolutely enthralled. So now I feel like I want to read some Klingon fiction. And since Worf is on the cover of this one, and Worf is one of the main characters in it, I thought that I would read this one. And then I will also be reading, or hopefully be reading, Collateral Damage by David Mack for the same reason that Worf seems to be one of the main characters in it, even though Picard is on the cover. Okay, and then I found these really nifty books that I didn't even know were in existence. I came across them by accident, and these are a series of books called the Which Way books, which are exactly like the Choose Your Own Adventure books. And they have 2 Star Trek books in that series. One is called Phaser Fight, Star Trek Phaser Fight, and the other one is called Star Trek Voyage to Adventure. So I couldn't resist, since Choose Your Own Adventure books was one of my very favorite series of books to read when I was a kid. I couldn't resist hunting these down and picking them up, and really they're in really good condition. There really weren't very many available, and I didn't pay that much for them, so I was super pleased to have found these. And then when I was shopping around on the Book Outlet website, I came across these little children's books called What is the Story of Captain Picard? And What is the Story of Captain Kirk? And they have a whole series of what is the story of such and such on there, and I'd never heard of this series of books. I don't have small children anymore. My son's 31. So I just thought that looked like an intriguing series, and when I saw these, I knew I definitely wanted to read them. Okay, so that is the total of my potential TBR. Now I am a mood reader, so though I will probably read a lot of these, I probably won't get to all of them, and I will more than likely pick up other books that weren't on this TBR as the mood strikes me. And I will call that the end of the video.